See. So you see them while walking through the city streets, sitting on the floor with their hands stretched out. But the first thought that goes through your head is, they're just going to take my money and buy drugs. If Saint Bishoy thought the same way as us, then he would have not carried Jesus on his shoulder, who was being there like the old man. So what do we do when we see these homeless people on the streets? And tonight we're about to find out. Tonight we have with us an organisation who's here to talk about how they deal with the homeless here in the city streets of Sydney. So I'd like to introduce to you to our two guests on tonight's show. We have with us Peter Rose and Mark Abdelmalek. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mina.
So before we get into the topic, I want to remind the viewers that the phone number is 0452 421 697. So please, if you have any questions you want to share with us tonight, please send your questions to this number by text, or if you want to speak to the guys here tonight, give us a call and speak to them live on the show tonight. So before we get into the topic, I want to show you a small video showing what these guys do in the city streets of Sydney.
From the day you were born and took your first breath, you opened your eyes and in came the light. He was watching you, but all of your life you couldn't shake the lies in your head saying you're a mistake. But you were made by a God who knows your name. He doesn't make mistakes. You are wanted to every broken heart. He stands with open arms. You are wanted to every searching soul. Look to the rising sun. If you're lonely, hurting, gone too far, to the outcast you come as you are. For you, you are wanted. You are wanted. You are wanted. You are wanted. Let this be the day that joy takes the place of all of the years that shame tried to steal away. He is calling you. Lift your eyes to see his face. Come run into the arms of grace. You are wanted to every broken heart. He stands with open arms. You are wanted to every searching soul. Look to the rising sun. If you're lonely, hurting, gone too far, to the outcast you come as you are. For you, you are wanted. You are wanted. You are wanted. You are wanted. You have been marked. You're set apart, and he calls you his. So you don't have to search, don't have to look for where you belong. You are wanted. Yeah, yeah. You are wanted. Yeah, yeah. You are wanted to every broken heart. He stands with open arms. You are wanted.
Hi, and thank you for tuning in. So tonight we just saw a short video of your organisation. So tell us, what is the name of your organisation and what are you guys about?
So is COCOS, which stands for Coptic Orthodox Community Outreach Service, and what we do is we provide a range of services to homeless people within Sydney, and that looks like different things at different times, but for the most part what we have going all the time is that we have a weekly service that runs on Tuesday nights, and it's in 2 locations, but we'll talk about that later. And what we serve is a hot meat-based meal. We try to focus on quality so that it's a really nice hearty meal, and we also offer clothing, which is quite a large, like a mission table where they can, you know, just to be an ear that can hear them, a shoulder to cry if they need it, and just a good chance to have and judging.
Yeah. So when did this service start?
Well, the service started almost 20 years ago this year.
Oh wow.
So it's always ongoing work at trying to develop what we do to cater for the current needs of the current communities and the.
Yeah. So when you guys first started, so what obstacles did you face? What did you guys come across? Anything stand in your way? So
I mean, it's like any startup. You know, Father Schnurder started the service 20 years ago. I think at the time with Father Gabriel Yasser, before he was a priest, and they had a desire to serve the homeless at the time, and they had to try and find them where they are. I think when they started, they had heard of a squat at Parramatta, and they used to go visit that squat and see the needs of the people there. But they quickly learnt that that was their private space and they were invading their private space a bit. So they then started standing in the mall at Parramatta, and they would come to them, and that way, you know, they weren't invading their space. So they were always learning little things like that along people needed, you know. So that was, you know, one challenge, and the next challenge was when you find a spot to serve, there's public in that area, there's shops in that area. They start to get annoyed that you're attracting, you know, people below the poverty line to that area. So then there's a whole dialogue that starts with the council, with the police, with the residents, or with the shopkeepers to try and find a suitable location. So that was another challenge. In both areas, we had that challenge. It took us a few goes to find out the best location to serve. When we started in the city, the residents weren't happy. We moved to another area and the police weren't happy. And then recently the council weren't happy. So it's a real, you know, you really have to liaise with a lot of different groups and stakeholders and the homeless to find the right spot, to find or the food would spill in the car. So, you know, and then over the years we fine-tuned that, with the grace of God, we got the vans, came, and then we found good thermoses and containers to store the hot water in. We found a good way to store the food in. So there was probably too many challenges to talk about in this segment, but yeah, there are a few of the little, you know, challenges that we faced along the way.
But do you feel the grace of God in everything you do, even though these obstacles keep coming towards you?
Absolutely. If not for the grace of God, there would be no way that our service would look like it does today, and that we would have had the thousands of little, minor achievements, little successes that all add up and make it, extremely special. Mark can tell you about a lot of those, but it is always the grace of God that keeps us going. Even establishment, we're talking 20 years ago, it's a history, but it's not, because it's still relevant today. We still have to deal with all our challenges in much the same way. We still have some of the similar challenges of consistency and things like that. We always have the prayers of people as well, and the grace of God guiding us and directing us. We have been able to manage many difficult situations, and we've... Okay, yeah, let's do that.
So, please.
At one point, Father Schnurder, he's our real inspiration, because he aims for up here, and we think, how are we going to do that? And anyway, early on in the service, he said, Mark, we need a van. And, early on, the service wasn't well known. We just scraping some money together to buy the weekly meals and things. And I said, Father, 20 grand or 25 grand to get a van. We're not going to get that from. He goes, we need a van. I said, all right, Father, we need a van. Anyway, at the time, it was coming close, I think, to the state elections. And if you know how those things work, the parties throw a lot of money out to different groups, to get their support, basically. Out of the blue, someone from our community, a young youth actually, that was in one of the parties, came up to us and said, our party's giving away some money, is there anything you need? So we need a van. Can you help us? He goes, how much do you need? I said, about 20,000. He goes, yep, I can help you. And I just looked at him. I said, okay. He said, this is what's going to happen. I can get you the check. Someone from the party's going to come. He's going to come on a Tuesday night. He's going to serve with you guys, take some photos, and then you'll get a check. And I said, okay. And that's exactly what happened. And it was the grace of God. We needed something, and out of the blue, someone comes, and it comes. The same, we needed to, the service was getting bigger, and we needed to cook a lot more. And Father said, we need an industrial kitchen. I said, where are we going to get an industrial kitchen from? We got some quotes from people and that. He said, it's about 10 to 15,000, Father, for the ovens and the stainless steel benches and this and that. And he goes, okay, we'll do some announcements, and we need a kitchen. I said, all right, Father. One Sunday, he did some announcements. At the end of the Mass, someone came up to him and said, Father, here's a cheque for $11,000. And we scraped together the rest. And we fitted out the kitchen with our needs. And it's always been like that. Whenever we've needed anything, we just find God provides. And I suppose you get a sense then of this is God's service. You really feel His hand in it. We're not doing anything, and we don't have the ability to do much. And when we need anything, He provides it, and you really feel God's hand in the service.
Even historically as well, we've always depended on the donations of people, and very little income, coming from outside of people's donations. So donations sometimes, can be up and down. And when we find that the bank account's almost empty, and to do a shop to stock up our storeroom, that could cost $2,000 or $3,000 just, you know, to get the quantities of rice and the Milo and the, you know, all the milk and things like that. So all of a sudden, on the day that we need it, the money's, someone's donated it via, you know, their bank transfer, and, you know, obviously that timing couldn't have been better.
So what are we looking at? How many people do you guys serve?
So weekly, it's about 145 people across the two sites. If we look at yearly, what we serve about 14,000 meals in a year, and we serve about 18,000 drinks, hot tea, coffee, cold drinks, juices. So that gives you a feel of the quantity that we serve across the two sites in Parramatta and the city.
How often is this service run? Is it just the once a week but in two locations? Or?
Yeah, so the service is primarily on Tuesday nights, which is so obviously once a week at the two locations. It just happens to run, you know, more or less at the same time, because obviously having one team to do the cooking, it's easier to get volunteers to cook a larger batch over one day than to commit to 2 days a week. But our service never stops. There's always a lot of behind the scenes work. Sometimes we get special requests as well from the people that we serve. If someone just you know, got granted housing, for example, and they need to furnish their place, and that they need help to do that, we try to source those things, and obviously that's not happening on a Tuesday night. You know, sometimes people need other special arrangements if they're unable to carry out some duties themselves and they need help. We try to assist with that as well. Or people that need groceries, we try to provide for them. And a lot of behind the scenes work that isn't the front line, of course, which you know, we can get into if you really want.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just before we get into it,
Yeah.
I got a couple of questions that just came in from the audience.
Okay.
So, but before we ask this question, I want to encourage the audience members, so please send your questions to 0456 your questions, or give us a call and speak to Peter or Mark tonight on the show. So let's get into the audience questions. There's actually a couple that came in. One of them's asking, I don't know how to deal with people well, but I wouldn't mind doing this service. Any advice?
Look, probably the best advice, if you don't feel comfortable in that environment, there's a lot of behind the scenes work. The clothes is a major part of our service, the distribution of clothes. The clothes is collected at different points, it's sorted, and so that's a big service in itself. And there's a team at Parramatta and a team in the city that does that. The city team sometimes has a bit of a working bee, and on a weekend they go to someone's house and there's hundreds of clothes and they sort it, clean it, wash it, and organise it. There's the shopping during the week. There's the ladies that cook all day on a Tuesday that we have to do. So there's a lot of different services in the background that are all associated with the homeless service.
Okay. Another question that came in, they're asking, how do I know if this service is from me, from God?
It's from me, from God?
I think they're trying to say for me, from God.
Okay. Well, a lot of people like to talk to their spiritual father or their confession father about things like that. Personally, I haven't done so. I just knew that, you know, obviously it was about maybe 13 years ago or so that I started, and I knew that I had some time on my hands and that this was something interesting. So I went along, casually as anything, and found out that I could contribute there. And once I started to learn more about the service, I started to fall in love with it more. And I became more serious about it, and I started not missing a week. And, you know, getting really more involved in the operations end, because I found that that's where I could contribute the most. That's where my strengths were. And it just grew on me, you know, to the point where I got basically addicted to the service. And I didn't need, you know, anyone to convince me. So I'd probably just say, best thing to do is give it a go. If you think that you have it in your heart to be compassionate for people that are in clear need, then the best thing to do is give it a go, and you'll probably come out all the richer for it.
Yeah. I know we talked about this briefly before, but I want to talk more about it. So when the organisation first started, how did the people first perceive you guys, or were you welcomed, or how were people taken by you coming in and offering this service? Because the reason why I'm asking that third question is some people are there not looking for a handout, and they could feel that no, you're invading their space, like you mentioned before. So how were people taken by your presence?
Well, if we provide a service and we do it in the right way, we're trying to do it in a way that doesn't upset people. Even now, I mean, back then it was a challenge, and it still is a challenge now. Just very recently, one of the homeless people that we do often serve came up to me and he said, when it rains, because we have a different location in the city site, when it rains we go under a bridge. That's where the council's allocated us to be. So when we're there and people sleep under that bridge, and we're there for, we're there quite late, and some people like to get to sleep before then because they get moved on early in the morning, so they need to get their good night's sleep. He asked us, if we could downsize the service and try to finish up early, which obviously impacts on the service that we provide for everybody. So these kind of challenges, we're always aware of how we can manage them, and we negotiated with him and tried to come up with, how we could make it look to suit not only him but everyone else that also sleeps there. And by doing that, you find that people see that we're there not to achieve anything of our own. We're not trying to achieve any statistics. We're not trying to serve more meals than the other service or anything like that. We're there to actually serve them, and we're there because of our love for them. So they quickly catch on to that, and their perception of us changes. They know that we're a Christian group because our title is Coptic Orthodox, but they know that we're not there to Bible bash them or to make them change. We accept them for who they are, as they are, and we love them as they are. And we get that same love in turn.
Do you share anything spiritually with them, or do you wait for them to approach you and ask for some spirituality?
Yeah, so before every meal we pray the Our Father. And then that's really that's as much as we do. There's a mission table. And so if they come to the mission table and they want to talk about a spiritual topic, or they raise a spiritual topic, then we engage with them on the spiritual topic. But we don't initiate a religious discussion with them. We're there, our religious discussion is through our actions and what we do, not through what we say. A lot of our servants are younger youth. They actually might not feel very comfortable or feel confident to have a religious discussion. So really, we don't Bible bash is kind of what we say. We say the Our Father at the start. We do our service with love. If someone initiates a discussion, we have a discussion. Whenever Father's there, a lot of the time, a lot of them come up to him and ask him to pray for them. Father, can you pray on me? Can you say a prayer for me? And so we let them initiate it. Basically, is the rule. We'll never start a religious discussion.
Sure.
But just by our action, when they, instead of like that, we pepper kind of what we do in our language with those kind of loving, words. And if that starts a conversation, it does. If it doesn't, we've planted the seed.
Yeah.
And God does the rest.
Okay. We actually have a phone call that just came in. So we have with us Phil from Sydney. So welcome, Phil. What is your question to the guests?
Hi, Mina. Thanks for putting me on, Mark and Peter. My question for you guys is, with COVID, or what do you think is the biggest improvement needed for the service?
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for your question.
So if I heard the question right, is where do you see the service in 5 or 10 years? I'll probably quote Father Sturda on this. Like I said, he really pushes the boundary of the service, and he's told us on many occasions. But most recently, he said, "I want a 10-story building to me," and basically, I think Father's dream is to, have a detox, kind of facility where we can deal with those type of people, have a few rooms where we can help people like crisis accommodation in a crisis, have counsellors available, maybe a nurse or a doctor available at certain times, have a permanent soup kitchen, a bit of a soup kitchen or office, so to speak, for COCOS, that we can run some of those facilities out of on a more permanent basis instead of one night a week. So I think that's Father's vision. I hope I've done it justice.
We just got another question that just came in from the audience. They're asking, how can you differentiate between the homeless and those that are not and just scabbing off you? And how do you put a stop to it?
Well, we don't try to put a stop to it because we welcome everyone that comes to our service, because we understand that the needs are different. So there are the homeless that have a legitimate need for the food and the clothing that we provide. Sometimes they get rained on and they have no dry clothes. So, a new fresh pair of clothes is everything at that moment. But other people that aren't necessarily rough sleepers definitely have their own set of needs, and they're just as valuable to us as well. When you look at homelessness, there are the rough sleepers that sleep outside on the street. There are other people who have no home, but they're not rough sleepers. So, we serve just outside the Matthew Talbot in the city, which is the largest men's refuge that I know of, definitely in Sydney. That houses about 98. There's 98 beds, and it's almost at capacity all the time, and that's just for men. So all those men are homeless. They don't have a home of their own. That's only very short-term accommodation there. Even though they might have a place to wash their clothes and they might have a place to get another meal, they still have a set of needs that aren't necessarily catered for them elsewhere. And there's also a housing commission in Woolloomooloo nearby, and many of our most valued customers or clients, or however you would refer to them, have been supporting us in many ways. But they also come down for the social element. They also come down just to sometimes help us, like they might put their hand in and volunteer. They might help by also managing, some other people that are there. It's a very dynamic place when you look at how the social structure works. But everyone there comes because they get something positive out of it. And I would never want to stop that, so I wouldn't stop anyone. The people that are rough sleepers get something positive. The people that are housed and the people that are in refuges, even down to every volunteer, everyone that comes to the service will get something positive out of it. And that's one of the most beautiful things as well that I see there.
Yeah, and like back to the question, I mean, I'd hate to use that word, but for argument's sake, if someone did come down to, as the questioner put it, to scab, and he might be touched by something that happened at the service, if someone's saying, God bless to you, or Jesus loves you, something like that, he might have come down with maybe not the best intention, but he might have been touched by something that happened on the night or an interaction he had with someone. Actually, one of our team leaders last week, I think, or the week before at Parramatta, posted a beautiful story to the group. We have a group for all the volunteers of how someone was touched by how they were served on the close at the close table at Parramatta, and how that person came to Luke because they knew that he was one of the team leaders at Parramatta, and they said, you know, I was looked after so much tonight, and you know, and they shared that story with the volunteers, and it really moved everyone.
Okay. We're going to go for a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue on the discussion. So thank you to our audience members who have been tuning in. Please, the phone number is 0452 521 697. Please send your questions, and when we come back from the break, we'll continue our discussion.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
Hi, and welcome back to Ask on CYC. So we're talking about the homeless in Sydney. So we actually got a question that just came in from an audience member, and I believe we have a video to support this question. The question asks, I've heard that Christmas Day is a special event for COCOS. Can you tell us about that? So we'll play video?
Yeah, I think that answers it well.
Okay.
Hey, can you take over for a bit? Yeah. Christmas, my true love sent to me. 12 drummers drumming, 11 pipers piping, 10 lords are leaping, 9 ladies dancing, 8 maids are milking, 7 swans are swimming, 6 geese are mating, 5 golden rings, 4 golden birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree.
So thank you for that video, and it's a beautiful video, and it's actually inspired me to ask you this question. So people have the misconception that these homeless people are drug addicts and alcoholics. So people have this impression that the homeless on the streets are addicted to drugs and alcohol. So please, can you share what are the truths and what are you guys dealing with on this topic?
Look, to be honest, and I think I was sharing this with you a minute before we came on, you find a lot of these people are normal people, professionals, bankers, solicitors, lawyers, teachers, and that they're going through a bit of a trough or a dip in their life. Kind of a common scenario is, happily married with kids. They find themselves in a separation or a divorce situation. The wife or one party or the husband might get the house, and so another party's left without a house. They start drinking as a result. They lose their job as a result, and before they know it, just through kind of some circumstances in life, they find themselves no house, no job, on the street. But they're quite a normal person. So that misconception that everyone you see on the street is drug addict or alcoholic, or gambling, we find it's not really true. It's a lot of people just going through a bit of a tough patch in their life, and they find themselves in that situation, and a lot of the time, they get themselves out of that situation. We've had people come back after years, 10 years, and in Parramatta or the city, and say, "Do you remember me? You look really hard," and I used to come here, but now I've got a job, and I've got a house, or I'm married, and whatever." And so, there is a small minority, that might be that case, but it is a very small minority.
Okay, so some people might come to wonder these situations of smelly, like bad odor and bad smells. So how can one get past these smells, or how can one prepare themselves to deal with such situations?
Look, if you're coming to the service with the right attitude, with the right heart, that won't bother you, and you won't see that. And a great example where we've seen that is with Mother Teresa. If you've read any of her books or seen the movie or the video, she talks about those people that she served, and it's a very famous line. She says, "I don't see the person, I see God. I see Jesus when I'm serving them." And so, if you come to the service with the right heart, the right attitude, the smell, their look, all that kind of stuff, really, you'll see through that stuff.
Yeah. So does one need to prepare in going into a service like this, or can you just tag along and help out?
Well, when someone wants to come along for the first time, it's good to prepare in some ways and consider what you're going into. That way you can go into it knowing, why you're going and why you're serving, and maybe talk to someone that's been before if you have the luxury to do that. They might be able to tell you about some of the good things that you can try to do while you're out there, and some of the risks that you have to be aware of as well. But even if you don't have the luxury of preparing like that, you can always come along to the site and introduce yourself, or be introduced to one of the site coordinators first before you start service, and they'll try to make it an appropriate entry for you. So one thing I might do in the city is, if someone new comes and asks me, what can I do to serve? If I know it's their first night, I might put them, we have a fence there that, they could surf from behind the fence where the clothing area is. That way they're not out in the public area where it's they're at their most vulnerable, or I might ask them to stand behind a table and serve food from behind the table. That way they can serve and they could be engaged in and contributing to the service, but at the same time it gives them an opportunity to do that without being at their most vulnerable, and an opportunity to see the environment and to get a feel for the dynamic in the environment, and to see also how the more experienced volunteers manage situations and how they interact with people out there. And that's a nice, easy transition in from, you're going in cold and then, you slowly warm up to know what to expect. I find that to be a pretty good way to do it.
Okay, so if someone wants to get into this service, can they contact someone, or can they go to your website, which we're going to put up on the screen very soon?
Yeah, look, the best, the contacts are on the website. So there's a contacts section on the website. Father Schnurder is the director, so they can always get in contact with Father Schnurder as well, and he can direct them in the right spot. But the website, cocos.org.au, from there's links to the Facebook page, and there's also our contacts list there as well.
Okay. Well, that's all we have for tonight's show, and I'd like to thank you for telling us about this service, and hopefully the show inspires people out there to come and serve with you guys, or even just serve the homeless on the street, and not have the mentality that, hey, that money is going to go to drugs. So we're here as cops put on earth to serve and show that we are Christians. So thank you for telling us about your organisation and the wonderful service that you guys have done until today.
Thank you, man.
Thanks, Mina, and as we say at COCOS, God bless, and Jesus loves you.
Thank you. And thank you for our audience member who tuned into tonight's show. Hopefully you've gained an insight on what serving the homeless here in Australia is about, and it shouldn't be limited to just Sydney, Australia. Take it with you around the world. So I'm Mina Ibrahim from your CYC studios in Sydney. Good night and God bless.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.